Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. As always, it is Nick here, back with your daily crypto news and analysis. And today we're going to be talking about Ripple and XRP, as well as the vast majority of crypto and finance. So let's just dive in. And let's start off with this tweet here. So what do you see? Russia's deputy prime minister said today that the country would completely drop the dollar and euro in energy trade. Reminder, Putin said in 2014 that Russia wanted to move to national currencies in trade 9 years ago. What's also interesting is that we started to see a major push towards crypto settlement, as well as crypto adoption around trade and also even cross-border payments. Russia has been very adamant about utilizing any means necessary to not only settle transactions, but also do cross-border trade and also cross-border transactions themselves. What's very interesting is the time that we are at now is very interesting around the US dollar, because we start to see many nations, not just Russia, not just China, and not just the BRICS moving away from the US dollar, but many other nations as well. And the lifeline preserver for the US dollar is essentially Saudi Arabia. A lot of people believe that Saudi Arabia isn't going to be the one that puts the nail in the coffin for the US dollar, but I beg to differ, especially considering the fact that the petrodollar deal has been a big proponent for the US dollar's value, as well as a major hedge against us printing money. That's like basically the last value preserver for the US dollar. So once we do see Saudi Arabia push against the US dollar, well, guess what? It's essentially game over. Now, over here, we do see it's a race against time. So this is another very interesting subject here, because as we do look at what's actually happening around the US and even China, currently right now, the US wants a hot war with China before the dollar hegemony dies. China wants full-blown de-dollarization before the US starts a war. The contest will be decided before 2030. And yes, I do believe that within the next 7 years, and it could happen any time now, right? That we will be going to war. And the US has relied on war to hold the dollar up in value for so long. In fact, the US loves war, because guess what? It means that we have to grossly print more money. We could flood the entire system with that money as well. And ultimately, it allows for us to have a lot more debt. And the interesting thing about that is that by 2030, the Treasury already wants to print another $18 trillion worth of money. So war is the best bet. But also, and you guys could look this up because I've actually been doing a lot of research on this, a lot of people believe that we have a very strong army, a military, if you will. But the interesting thing about that is a lot of our warships and a lot of the things that we do have around our army is actually breaking down. We have not done a lot of maintenance on our warships and things like that. So right now, currently, we need to go to war, because if we don't, then our army basically stands no chance unless we print a lot more money. Which is also why, again, I say like by 2030, $18 trillion could essentially flood the system. And if we do see $18 trillion flood the system, well, I'm not too sure you're going to want to be holding the US dollar, which is also why I say that we should be diversifying within crypto and even outside of crypto, meaning gold and silver and many other things as well. But it seems as though the US wants war. Is it inevitable? Who knows? But I do believe that de-dollarization is inevitable. And we do see over here, we've done this to ourselves. And this is a conversation with Douglas MacGregor covering debt, digital currencies, proxy wars, Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, de-dollarization, global reserve currencies, and more. This is with Natalie Brunell over on Twitter, but this is about a 44-second long segment. Real quick, I'm going to play it, and then we will talk a little bit more about it.
We not only pass on our debt to others by compelling everybody else to use the dollar, but the institutions, global institutions, use the dollar because it's convenient. And what we've done is we've effectively bullied so many people for so long that many are now saying, well, Russia's got a point, China's got a point. Why should we do business constantly in the dollar? Now, this doesn't mean that the so-called reserve currency is going to go away instantly, but I think it's in serious trouble. So this de-dollarization is very serious at this point. We shouldn't underestimate it. But I think we brought it on ourselves. If you constantly beat people over the head with, as you say, this weapon, this financial weapon, eventually they come back and say, we've had it. We don't.
And yeah, that's exactly what happened. We utilized the US dollar as a financial weapon, and we've utilized it as a financial weapon for a very long time. And now a lot of these nations are done with it. In fact, what he said around a lot of these nations saying, like, why are we utilizing the dollar still? Why is the dollar the reserve currency? Brazil actually just spoke out around this as well, and I included it in a video. You know, we are on a slippery slope for the US dollar. And yes, you know, we're not going to see the reserve status disappear overnight. No, it's not going to happen overnight. That's why we say, like, within the next 7 years, you know, the US is going to be in a lot of trouble. Either we go to war or we do see full-blown de-dollarization, which either way, either scenario is not going to look pretty. And you know, we have done this to ourselves. We grossly printed money. We grossly inflated the system, and we've caused so much harm against all other major nations. So, you know, the game that the US has been playing is basically over. And we do see over here, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS, are projected to pass the G7 nations in global economic growth by 2028. And yes, this is due to the fact that, you know, overseas, a lot of these nations are actually creating value instead of just printing value. And when we actually talk about printing value, the US isn't essentially printing value, because we know that the purchasing power of the US dollar since the inception of the Fed has not only gone down drastically, but ultimately the US dollar as a financial tool is basically useless. Yes, you could still go to the grocery store. Yes, you could still buy things with the US dollar. But we know that the US dollar is not nearly as strong as it once was. And we know that fiat currency has failed in the hands of the Treasury and the Fed. So as we do look at this, it's no surprise that the BRICS will basically pass the G7 nations in global economic growth. Because again, all we are running on is debt. And what we are reliant on is the fact that other nations will buy our debt and we will pay interest on that debt, which is crazy. And they even already said that with the $18 trillion that they want to print by 2030, we will be paying 30% of taxpayer money towards covering that debt. How insane is that? It's unsustainable. Now, also over here, Justin Treasury Secretary Yellen says economic sanctions on Russia and other countries put US dollar's dominance at risk. Now, I did include this in a video, I'm pretty sure just recently, but I want you guys to understand that we are finally seeing the idea of the US waking up to the realization of what they have done. I even said initially on that the sanctions against Russia was not going to be a pretty game for the US. Again, I actually think that that's what accelerated a major push against the US dollar and started the de-dollarization campaign, if you will, because again, these nations are done. They're sick and tired of the games that the US has been playing for so long. And I think that even the US citizens are seeing through their nonsense as well. It's only a matter of time. It really is. And even Peter Schiff says, and I don't agree with Peter Schiff on many things. This is one thing that I do agree with him though. Warns death blow coming for the US dollar, USD to lose reserve currency status. And we do see down here that he warned that a death blow is coming for the US dollar, and the US dollar will lose its global reserve currency status in this financial crisis. People are still reluctant to call it a financial crisis, but that's exactly what it is, except it's bigger in scale, and it's going to be far more impactful than the 2008 crisis. And this is what I've been telling everyone. It's going to be 2008 on steroids. The dollar losing its global reserve currency status. I'm telling you right now, it is going to be something that we haven't seen in well over a century, and we have no idea. We have no idea how this is going to look, but it's not going to be pretty. And we do see down here regarding whether de-dollarization is happening and whether it's a real threat to the US dollar's global reserve currency status. Schiff said, the only thing that's surprising about the dollar's reserve status is that it still has it. Despite everything that we've done, we still haven't lost that privilege. I think the current financial crisis, which just started, is going to ultimately deliver the death blow to the status. People are still reluctant to call it a financial crisis, but that's exactly what it is. And then he did discuss how it's bigger than 2008. It's probably going to result in even more aggressive and reckless monetary and fiscal policy, and this time it's going to take the dollar's reserve status down with it. That's going to really complicate things here in the US because it's going to send inflation much, much higher and American standards of living much lower. And we do see down here that there's always a risk for every country that issues fiat currency. Inflation is always a risk. The question is, how high is the probability? I think the risk is a lot higher now than it's ever been. And in order to avoid that outcome, it's going to require, it's going to require some very difficult political decisions and choices that need to be made to avert that outcome. And again, we still are, like right now, we are essentially in a crisis, but a lot of people are, they're not talking about it. Most of the mainstream media is not even discussing it. I believe that cryptocurrencies, like, listen, I've discussed it. I think that's a great way to escape a lot of the problems around, the US dollar. Everyone wants to value Bitcoin and Ethereum and XRP and all these other assets within crypto to the US dollar. I look at it as 1 XRP equals 1 XRP. I think that the US dollar, as we know it, is up in question. I don't know where the dollar is going to be in the next 5-10 years. I'm not going to sit here and say that, hey, the US dollar by 2025 is basically going to be worthless. But I do think that fiat currencies have failed. I don't believe that fiat currencies, you can go all the way back on the chart. I've included it in videos recently. I think that once we have a central bank in charge of fiscal policy, I think that that's where you can basically write off any value tied to a fiat dollar, if you will. Because the Fed, since its inception, has destroyed the dollar's value. And it's because of what we have allowed to happen in the US, which is grossly overprinting the dollar and inflating the system, causing financial ruin. And it really is just a game of how much harm can we do before something breaks. And we're at that point right now. The Fed has done so much, and they were just waiting for something to break. Back in March, banks started to collapse. Do you honestly think that that's the ending of it all? Oh, just a few banks collapsed. That's it. So everything's fine now. Absolutely not. We haven't even seen the worst of it yet. That was just a small little glimpse of what's to come in the future. We are going to see a lot more financial ruin. But that's why I've said, I believe that crypto will be, resistant to it. So far, crypto has been resilient. Going back to March, for an example, on that crash within the banks, Bitcoin did fall, but it rose just as quick. And we've seen a major bounce back because a lot of people were parking their dollars into crypto to escape the banking sector and the overall concern around where the banking sector was headed. But also, as we do look at the dollar today, I do think that we are on a severe lifeline right now. I've been looking at this on the monthly, for an example. On the monthly, yeah, we still look pretty good here. We still are riding the waves. If you look here, we're still riding the waves going all the way back to May. This is, pretty good in terms of support. Is it, significant at all? No. I do think that we lose this. I think that the dollar is going to continue to fall here. I think that the next area of interest ultimately is 99, somewhere within this range down here, 98, 99. But I do think that this is going to continue. And what's crazy about the US dollar is that somebody commented on my recent video, actually, they were talking about it and they said, looking at that macro chart is very interesting. And yes, it is. When you go and look at the macro chart and you go all the way back to the 80s, this thing has just been a continuous downtrend. And it's been a continuous downtrend since far before the 80s and even the 60s, going all the way back to, like I said, the inception of the Fed. But look at this, a high here, a lower high. The next lower high is probably going to be down within this 80 to 90 region. And it's going to continue like this because our government grossly prints money, grossly inflates the market with the US dollars, and we just rely on debt. There's no actual sustainable move on fiscal policy within the US. And that's exactly why we are starting to see things move towards, well, guess what? De-dollarization and a major push against the US. Over here, one day ago, Putin and Saudi Crown Prince discussed potential BRICS Saudi Arabia collaboration. This is going, like I said, the nail in the coffin for the US dollar. This is that event. This is the largest event to continue to watch for. Everyone needs to pay attention to what Saudi Arabia does. I see a lot of people constantly, commenting, saying, oh, it doesn't really matter. That doesn't really matter. I'll tell you right now, the petrodollar deal is one of the most important deals to the US dollar. That's going to be the nail in the coffin for the US dollar's value. It really is. And it's going to be a major blow to the US dollar's reserve status. And we do see down here that that Putin and the Saudi Crown Prince expressed satisfaction with the level of coordination at OPEC Plus aimed at ensuring the global oil market stability. You see down here that the parties, that's basically what I just read. But then down here, we do see prospects for cooperation between Saudi Arabia and BRICS were also considered. Again, they want to possibly join the BRICS. We do see Saudi Arabia has expressed interest to join the BRICS bloc, which comprises Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The BRICS nations have been ramping up efforts to reduce their dependence on the US dollar. They are also reportedly working to create a new type of currency. Moreover, the BRICS countries are focusing on expanding their international influence to counter Western countries' destructive actions. A Russian official recently said. Former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers has expressed concerns that a rising number of countries, including China, Russia, and the Middle East, are aligning themselves and gaining global influence, which is a challenge for the U.S. Fitch Solutions analyst said. BRICS de-dollarization, China, and cryptocurrency threaten the U.S. dollar's dominance. And yes, it's all, blows to the US dollar and the US dollar's dominance. And soon, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the US dollar's reserve status is going to drastically take a hit after hit. And guess what? It's only a matter of time until it gets knocked out and doesn't come back. So with all of this in mind, changes in the air. We are getting closer and closer to that death blow from Saudi Arabia. We do see changes in the air. The Middle East is undergoing a transformation as China has been showcasing its influence in the region. Last week, China bought its first stake in the Qatari gas field. Additionally, a Chinese company has expressed interest in investing $10 billion to tap into Afghanistan's vast lithium reserves. This comes as China brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia last month, and progress is being made to end the war in Yemen. It is worth noting China is the largest importer of crude petroleum in the world, and Saudi Arabia is China's top supplier of crude oil. China accounted for 30% of all of Iran's foreign trade in 2022. Both Saudi Arabia and Iran are interested in joining BRICS. Things are starting to line up for expansion. And yes, BRICS have been expanding. I mean, death blow after death blow, essentially. But the last major one, the last major one is that petrodollar deal being completely thrown out, which a lot of people have expressed the idea that that petrodollar deal could very well already be done. Now I ask all of you, do you believe that that petrodollar deal is finished? Comment down below. I'd love to hear from all of you. If you guys did enjoy the video though, definitely hit that like button, subscribe to notifications on to never miss a future update. And also if you guys do want more free content, you guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord down in the description below. So I hope that you all have a beautiful day or a beautiful night wherever you guys are on this before. This has been Nick. Peace out, guys.